Again, I want to reference the folks that because I think that we're entering a dark period in this country, and it could get much darker coming after the election day in November, especially if she is taking the oath of office January 20th of next year. And some of our callers have pointed out, yes, indeed, there are people who are looking to divide us and conquer us. Now, we are probably still in one of the safest places in the country, but still, those folks who are forming they're building a community in northern Idaho called the Redoubt. They're building it there because they say there are no major highways, so they don't expect someone can come in and get them very quickly. Albeit with today's technology, using roads may not even be a necessity. I just don't think they could control 300 million odd people. I think what they would do is they would look to control the larger cities and then pretty much ignore the rest of us here in the heartland, figuring we'll all just, cling to our God and guns and then eventually just fade away. But if you're concerned about these things, we've been telling you to drop in at the Last Stand Survival Shop. It's in Jerome. You're going to drive, if you're in Twin Falls, you're going to cross the bridge and go about 10 and a half miles until you get to that intersection with Route 25. If you hang a quick turn on 25 to the right and then a very quick turn to the left on Butte Drive, go to 18 Butte Drive, you'll find the shop. And they actually have people there who are building firearms, customized firearms, gunsmiths. And they'll develop these for your own personal needs. They'll fit your hands. They'll be based on what you need to do and what you think you may need to do in the future, as well as they have people there that can instruct you as well in usage and how to clean that firearm too. Also, they'll detail how you could put together a bug out bag, which is going to be critical if you have to get out of the area and perhaps go out into the South Hills and hide for a while. And also, that we wanted to point out they're on Facebook. You can find them at the Last Stand Survival Shop on Facebook and get all the more details there that you'd like to see. 9:35, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And I've got to tell you that the immigration thing with Trump, people are saying that he's backing away from it now and he's trying to tone it down so he can pick up some more support going into the general election. Over at the Washington Examiner, where they're not fans of Donald Trump, conservatives, but not fans of Trump. They said that Trump is basically offering Jeb Bush's thoughts on how we should better take on this challenge. But here's the thing. Trump turned to his audience at the Hannity town hall the other night. He threw out the idea, and then he turned to people and said, "What do you think?" He was more interested in getting the input from the public. In other words, I've said all along that the man tends to think aloud. And just because he's thinking aloud doesn't mean he's made a decision on anything yet. The writer says Trump, as Bush had before, started by denying that he wanted amnesty, but then argued that maybe illegal immigrants who have clean records should be allowed to pay back taxes and receive legal status. But then he went on to say no citizenship. In other words, you came here illegally. If you've been here 15, 20 years, pay me the back taxes, and you won't be a citizen. But, if you're productive, we'll let you stay and pay more taxes. Here's the thing. If they can't afford to pay the taxes, then I guess they'd have to leave. So it's a way for Donald Trump to smoke these people out. And I don't think that mainstream media has caught on to that yet. And he said he would enforce existing laws. There would be no sanctuary cities. Secondly, I said yesterday, I believe it was 10 years ago, that Congress actually passed legislation to build that border wall. So enforcing existing laws would mean you likely would finish that project. And I think most people realize once you get the wall up, at least it's a much more manageable problem, because then you don't have people who are coming here in such large droves. With a big welcome sign and Mr. Obama's picture, they're saying, "Hey, come here, go over to social services. Whitey will pay for it, and you can vote for Democrats." Yeah. Because that's what it sounds like to regular, hardworking Americans. And that's what I think liberals don't understand. They have such tunnel vision. They are unable to realize that there are people out there who are actually paying the freight for everyone else, and they frankly don't want to do it anymore. They've had enough. They can't afford to put their own kids through college. They can't afford to retire. They can't afford to lose a job because then they'll be out of everything they've ever worked for. And you want to talk about an insensitive group of morons? Well, no, they're not morons. Liberals have figured this all out. And the only way that they can take over and maintain control is to keep saying diversity makes us stronger and we're a nation of immigrants. All of those platitudes they throw out there with no evidence to back themselves up. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Another break coming up in just a moment, and then the stretch run of the program. We'll talk a little bit about that diversity coming up in a few minutes, as well as the collapse of Obamacare, potentially another thing to divide us. I do want to mention Dr. Christine Pickup is going to be on the program with us coming up on, I think it's Thursday, September 8th. If you're like most people, you're used to thinking of hearing as something that happens in your ears. In fact, it's what's between your ears that happens to count. The brain is where sound becomes details. Your brain has to work hard to make this happen, and when the sound signals from your ears end up compromised, your brain is working even harder to fill in the gaps. The extra effort can take a toll. Don't let your brain down. Take care of your hearing with the help of Dr. Pickup and Mount Harrison Audiology and Rupert. Call the office today for an appointment, 312-0957. A reminder again, and I don't think we can stress this enough, that caller mentioned earlier, hearing, he said, Limbaugh talk about this, that effort to try and divide and conquer this country and eventually just to disarm the public. Well, it's not going to happen if you don't let it happen. I guess that's the best way to put that, and I've been recommending all week, because it's still the grand opening week at Last Stand Survival Shop in Jerome, located at 18 Butte Drive. And again, if you're traveling out there, let's say you leave Twin Falls, you take Route 93 straight up about 10 miles, hang a right turn at Route 25, and very, very quickly there's a drive just to the left on Route 25, and that is Butte Drive. And the shop is fairly visible. Big sign, 18 Butte Drive. Big sign, Last Stand Survival Shop. And they have people there, gunsmiths, who can come up with some firearms to meet your specifications, your exact needs. They can also help you with prepping. That would be, as we've been telling you this week, about a bug-out bag. What would you take with you? What would you need to take with you? How long are you going to be away? They can work with you on all of those details. These are people who have some experience in prepping themselves, and they'd love to see you drop by. And if nothing else, just satisfy your curiosity about what you might need. They're also on Facebook. That's The Last Stand Survival Shop. 9:45, straight up. Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. We're at 60, on our way perhaps today into the upper 70s. And then we're actually going to see a warm-up over the next few days as we head toward Fair Week. And I guess we've been talking about that in the past. You get to the fair and you've got a couple of choices. Normally you're out there with a jacket. There's no in-between. Or you're walking around and you're in a sweat constantly from doing all of that. I like to go in the exhibit halls, because when I go in the exhibit halls, it gives me an opportunity just to cool off. So that's where I plan to spend most of my time when I'm out there over the next several days. And of course, officially it doesn't open up until late next week, but I'm going to be out there a little early talking to some of the people as they get organized and get underway and do some of the initial preparations. I have a couple of things to share with you before we wrap up the program today. We've been talking about, yes, how did we get here? How did we get to this point in this country where nothing works any longer and the lunatics are running the asylum? Dr. Walter Williams, you know him from his many, many years as being one of Rush Limbaugh's main on-air substitutes. Dr. Williams has a piece today at the Daily Signal talking about what's going on college campuses. A place called Hampshire College is offering some of its students what the school is calling identity-based housing. Well, what does that mean? Well, segregation. That's a good word for it. And he says they're offering it, by the way, to students of color, gender, or sexual orientation. But they're not offering it to people who might be Jewish, Irish, Polish, Chinese, or Catholic who would like to live with people from similar backgrounds. I know that some colleges now are actually forcing roommates upon each other. That never would have happened when I was in school. Here's another one. It says the president of Ripon College, Zachariah Masidi, he's a professor also in the politics and government department, is encouraging fellow professors this fall to disparage Donald Trump, arguing that it's fine for professors to acknowledge Trump's narrow-minded rhetoric in class. But they would be doing that on their own anyway, right? Fellow traveling commies they are. Adding to campus lunacy, he writes, are classes such as Lady GaGa and the Sociology of the Fame. That's at the University of South Carolina. Cornell University has this. Physical Education Department is offering a class titled Recreational Tree Climbing. You get credit for that, I guess. You can imagine going to your first job interview. Well, what are you qualified to do? I can climb trees. Well, I guess there's some work in forestry you could get. At Georgia State University, the English department is offering a course called Kanye versus Everybody. At Tufts University, one can take a class called Demystifying the Hipster. Skidmore College's sociology department is offering the sociology of Miley Cyrus. This goes on for another page, but I thought that would give you a bit of a flavor of what we happen to be talking about this morning. 9:48, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's 60, and you're on the air.
Yeah, good morning, Bill. I just came in and turned on the radio, and I heard you ask, how did we get to this point in this country? I think if you'll go back and look at what was preached in the churches, something like 25 years before the start of the colonial war, and compare it to what has happened, what is being taught in these churches today, you'll see that the doctrine that's being taught today could have never built this country. That's what brought us to this point.
I read on Christian Post a couple of days ago, there was a liberal pastor, and she is now telling Christians that it's okay to engage in a lot of premarital sex. These are types of things you would not have heard in a church just 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not good what's being taught. I mean, the homosexualism, the go along to get along, everything, even especially what's taught in Romans 13. Romans 13, that this government brings in the jihadis. The jihadis were stirred up in the Middle East to kill Christians. I mean, they're killing the Christians and letting the jihadis come in into Europe and here, and everything. They're denying Christian prayer. They're denying Christian holidays. Everything is antichrist in this country now, and it's because of this false doctrine of Romans 13 that's taught in the church.
And I was mentioning as well in the last half hour, I think it was, Pew Research Center says of all of the people who've walked away from going to church on a regular basis, half of them say it's because they no longer believe in God or miracles. Half.
Yeah. Think about this. These young people coming up, from what I understand, it's mostly young people that are leaving the church. And these young people that are coming up, they're not taught the way the young people were, say, 75 or 60 years ago, like that, the heavy faith of Jesus Christ. And they come up seeing that, according to the modern doctrine, they're not going to have a family. They're not going to have a husband and children. They're going to be whisked out of here, and they have nothing to look forward to. They can't teach that without teaching the other. They get it's a whole Bible, not just what we want to preach to get the people to give us money.
I thank you much for the call. We're looking at young people today who are more concerned about playing Pokemon than they are about anything else in their lives. I remember reading a survey about 10 years ago, and it's probably unchanged, but the majority of college students said that they would be willing to give up their Bill of Rights if someone would give them free college. In other words, pay off their college debts. They would give up their right to vote. I mean, this is astounding that we have raised a couple of generations now of people who are so incredibly vacuous. And what type of people are they? Well, they can be shaped into any direction someone wants them to be shaped now, other than their own families. You're up next. You're on the air at 9:51 on KLIX. Go ahead.
Well, how did we get here? We took prayer out of the schools, which I'm not going to say that. You see, that sounds so right-wing extremist, that statement. But you see, it was true. But you see, we also became so lax, willfully ignorant, whatever you want to call it, that we no longer cared to work at being a parent. We never could see down the road far enough to realize that these children would be a reward. They are our best friends, and we have dropped the ball like it's no tomorrow. Hey, parenting ain't easy, and it never ends. And they are your best friends if you are a worthy parent. But when none of us are perfect, and we do our best, but you see, when we turn away from God, your mom, who was at home, and who we would come home to a nice, loving mother who fed us and held us and loved us and taught us about how to feel the Spirit of God. And when you're a young child and you don't get it, you're never gonna get it. You never, to feel the Spirit of God in the proper manner is such a great thing, but it is so, it seems to be elusive, and people have no idea what God is. And then if you turn on the TV and you got some preacher on there, and there's a million channels with these guys, talking and doing stuff and singing, and it's just great, I guess.
Well,
But
you got people like Joel Osteen who tell you that God is going to make you win the lottery. These are false prophets, and obviously when I heard an NPR interview with him one day, where the NPR interviewer was treating Osteen as if he was somehow some major force for good in the Christian world, I realized we're in some serious trouble here.
well, this is the thing. How do you feel? How do you feel the Spirit? How do you have a sense in your heart and soul that there really is a God? Logic, there's lots of intelligent reasons to believe in God, but you see, it seems to be that your soul has to be touched by the Spirit. But you see, in this ever, distracted world, I don't know. Are we going to recover before Christ comes? I hope so, because I don't want to have to go through the hell before he gets here. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. I was watching the Revelation Road movies a few weeks ago, which I kind of say it's a little bit of a. It's like you took the best of the late Tim LaHaye, and you mix it up with a little bit of Mad Max, but the movies were very, very entertaining, and I thought very, very well done. Was it David White does these pictures, but what people would go through, oh my goodness, and it's what they would envision it would be like. We are talking cannibalism and cruelty and barbarity on a scale that likely no one has seen, probably since some of the worst atrocities of World War II, or maybe what happened in Rwanda. Those are little previews of what could be worldwide. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on KLIX.
Bill, I think our grandfathers and their fathers worked hard, had an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, tried to live within their means, and tried to make the country a better place for their kids. And that was what they gave to their kids. Today, everybody is a me person. People go out and they work, but then they give stuff to their kids. They don't teach their kids to earn their way and everything else.
But I think part of this, though, too, is we're dealing with people who are just looking around and they have no trust for the institutions or their neighbors any longer. And we've built a culture now where it sort of encourages people to just sort of pile up things for themselves and not help anybody else out or get involved. I mean, it's a very narcissistic culture.
Well, and you use the right words. We created that. Like I said, when you spoil the kids, and I was taught from a young age, if you didn't earn it, you don't respect it. And it's the truth. If you're given something, you don't care about it, you'll just trash it. But yet, if you had to pay for it, you had to sweat for it, you polish it.
Well, I would agree with that, and I thank you. Working for something actually gives you that appreciation. And gosh, with my parents, I thought they were slave drivers. But, I'm happy to get out of work now at 3 o'clock in the morning, or get out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning to come to work, and I look forward to it, and I realize every day that I do this and all of that prep work that goes into it, When I'm done, it's like, all right, some days I can sit back and I can say, I did what I was supposed to do. Bill Colley with you this morning. And just a reminder, tomorrow after 9 o'clock news, we're going to be joined in studio by Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn. Going to be talking about firearms tomorrow with Forrest again. This is going to become a regular feature on our program. It's 9:57 right now, and of course, God willing, if the creek don't rise, they'll allow me to come back tomorrow morning and do this all over again between 8 and 10 o'clock. I do want to remind as well, people, one more time this morning, if you are prepping for that day when everything could hit the fan, you better stop by Last Stand Survival Shop in Jerome, located there just beyond the intersection if you're heading out of Twin Falls of Route 93 and Route 25 at 18 Butte Drive. And they have gunsmiths on staff who are working with people. These are knowledgeable people. They'll find out what you need in a firearm for what your use will be, and they will build it. They'll customize it for you. And they'll also tell you what you're going to need if you have a need for a bug out bag. And you may have to go hide out somewhere for a while in a cave until things settle back down. And you can check them out on Facebook as well. That is Last Stand Survival Shop. Rush Limbaugh will follow the news at 10 o'clock from Fox. Bill Colley saying, have a great day.